a great honor for me today to conclude this day, and I hope that all of you watching from the comfort of your homes, you are able to live this as a unique experience. You heard amazing ideas, you heard compelling stories, and I hope that this day has sparked some emotions with you and you are able to feel inspired. I would like to tell you an episode from my childhood. When I was 10 years old, I was about to take my longest trip ever, moving from one continent to another with my entire family as we were following my father's career. For me, it was very exciting because for the first time, I had my own passport to travel with, which, believe me, at that time, felt like really being a grown-up. I could also feel the anticipation of what it would be like to live in a completely new environment. So of course, there was a lot of things going on at our house as we were preparing to pack and to leave and to fly from the eastern coast of Africa all the way to a small country in Europe. For me, however, the only concern was to pack all my drawings. And then my mother came to me and she said, "You don't need them, you will make some new ones." I was devastated. That was the most important thing for me. I had even won a contest. Or perhaps I came in second. Sometimes my memory of that episode is a bit blurry. The fact is, I had won a small trophy. So today, when I look back at that episode, I do get my mother's point. I was a child, I had the future ahead of me, I could do or create anything I wanted. And that is exactly what we say about children. They can do anything they want. For a long time, I have been wondering why we barely say the same thing about ourselves once we become adults. Now, this will come with no surprise at all to tell you that the older we get, the less we let ourselves feel every emotion. The less we let ourselves be. Unfortunately, this has a major influence on our aspirations and oftentimes on our health. I would like to take you through my experience in addressing this issue. I would like to share with you today how it's important and powerful to be connected to one's emotions consciously, because this enables every individual to achieve anything they have the potential for. And this is key for two reasons. The first one is that we usually let our thoughts guide us through life as opposed to what we feel. And the second reason is that we tend to educate children in this direction as well. Now, speaking about emotions, let's take a look at happiness. Have you ever asked yourself, among those in your surroundings, how many take joy in what they do? Do you know how many people proactively choose to be happy in their workplace? Throughout the years, I listened and watched people around me, and I encountered people who were afraid to act upon their aspirations. People who locked themselves in jobs that clearly did not suit them. When in fact, happiness is considered to be a driver of performance and success. This is the complete opposite of the common belief that becoming successful will ultimately allow us to find happiness. As a matter of fact, it's the other way around. Happiness fuels success. When you're happy, you focus on positivity in any given situation. You put your energy where it matters, which means that you're much more likely to succeed at whatever you do. That is part of so-called positive psychology, whereby you prime your brain with happy thoughts. And did you know that our brains are hardwired to perform at their best when they're positive? Not when they're neutral, not when they're negative, but when they're positive. Now, add to this, research has shown that you can move your mind in a way that you better experience life. That is, experiencing the potential, power, and possibility you believe you have. That is amazing. And I'm sure that right now, some of you are asking yourselves, well, that's nice, but how do I move my mind? Well, one of the secrets is to remove your own mental stereotypes. Stereotypes that can have different origins. It can be cultural, it can be religious, family, friends, you name it. But pay attention here. This is by no means a call to determine what is right or what is wrong. rather to observe how we as social beings are influenced without consciously being aware of it. Okay, so that's one way to move your mind. There's another way that you can use to move your mind, and that is meditation. In 2013, a French author and Buddhist monk by the name of Mathieu Ricard said in an interview that we vastly underestimate the power of transforming the mind. In other words, we so much undervalue our own power to transform our mind. When 8 years ago I picked up a couple of yoga practices, I did not expect and I did not know how much focusing my attention inward with guided meditation would be so beneficial. As a matter of fact, I noticed that practicing meditation on a regular basis not only gives clarity and balance, it also offers space to observe. You are much more aware of everything you feel in any given situation. And this definitely includes those difficult emotions we don't like to feel, the ones we tend to avoid, like fear. In fact, fear is natural. When fear comes up, there is a cause to it, so it should not be dismissed. The challenging part, though, is that you need to acknowledge that and then let it go. Because if you cannot do that, you will try to control every other external situations just to avoid feeling fear. And what happens? It starts to bother you and you get scared. That is the problem. So when I look back at my childhood, when I was growing up, I was quite a shy kid, up to my teenage years, I have to say. And when I mean shy, I mean seriously shy. Like in some situations, I was really scared to dare do or dare say anything. Now, luckily, with time, I learned to ask myself 2 questions. Number 1, what do I have to lose? All things considered, really, it's insignificant. Number 2, what is the worst that can happen? When I think of it, nothing I cannot live with. And these 2 questions have really made a difference for me. And then, a few months ago, I was driving home from work, and I heard a woman tell her story on the radio. Her narrative gave me such an incredible perspective on fear, I try to always keep it present with me. This woman's name is Sylvie Staub. She is a nurse. When at the age of 40, a mass the size of a grapefruit is discovered in her abdomen. She undergoes surgery, and after surgery, she's diagnosed with cancer. Less than 1 year later, it's the first relapse. She has a new tumor, and this time the doctors tell her there's nothing they can do. She only has 2 years left. Now fear comes in. She feels sentenced. On the radio, she quietly explains that preparing to die is preparing to live. Everything that she has done in this sense has helped her. She even says that there is a meaning to the disease, explaining to the radio show host that the word why is translated in ancient Greek with towards what. She talks about cancer to be more alive. She talks about welcoming the ordeal by letting herself be transformed, even though it was unpleasant. I listened carefully to her words, and towards the end, she said something that I vividly remember. She says that fear of sickness and death undermines healing. That seeing illness as a path that life is taking is a way to leverage our resources in a much more effective manner. It was mind-blowing, and I thought to myself, what an amazing testimonial of the power of transforming the mind. After several years battling the disease, Sylvie has been cancer-free for over a decade. Her healing was totally unexpected. Today, she teaches mindful meditation, not only to adults, but also to children and teenagers. So I believe that children are the hope for the future. And I think that our role is to educate them with a holistic approach so they can face that future at their best. Children and young people need skills that will help them be able to thrive. So in a classical and standardized educational system, just like the one I went through, and I would bet anything that almost all of you did the same, there's not a lot of room for trial and error, for experimenting, for developing well-being, the connection between the mind and the body. However, in the early 1900s, an Italian physician and educator by the name of Maria Montessori developed a special method. She based her work on scientific observations of children and their experimentations with the environment, with materials, and with lessons that were made available to them. The aim of the Montessori method is for children to develop physically, socially, emotionally, and cognitively in a way that is autonomous. This method is used in different parts of the world. There are approximately 20,000 Montessori schools based on this form of education. And I want to give you an example. In France, some of these schools offer what they call a well-being context for learning. What do? They teach yoga, meditation, even philosophy starting in kindergarten. It's believed that short meditation sessions before classes starts enhance learning abilities, reduces stress, and helps the children manage their emotions. Now, there are other alternatives to classical education that were developed much more recently. And you can find different types of schools around the world in different countries, for example, in Brazil, in the UK, in Finland, and in India, just to mention a few. All these forms of education have something similar. They offer space for students to learn what they're really interested in. Students do this in groups of children with different ages, and they do it at the pace that suits them. On top of that, some of these schools, for them, mindfulness is an important tool in their teaching methods. So when I bring together all these different pedagogies, I find one common feature, and that is children are trusted for being who they are. They develop self-confidence, they develop self-esteem, and they develop critical thinking by learning at their own pace. So imagine a global educational system centered around who children are, making their own experiences as they grow. Can you picture something like that? This somehow reminds me a quote from the late great American poet and civil rights activist Maya Angelou, a quote that says, "I have learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." So what if everything was about experiences, how they make us feel from childhood all the way through adult life? What if our feelings were so important they become the source of our actions? And what if observing our feelings had the power to transform our mind? Isn't that worth focusing our attention towards ourselves? Isn't that worth questioning our thoughts? Think about it. Now, I don't remember exactly what my mother told me a few decades ago when we were packing. What I do remember is how I felt about what she said. I was disappointed, I was sad, and I was frustrated. Perhaps I could have made a career out of drawing, become a visual artist or something similar in response to those emotions. What I did do is pursue a career based on other emotions I had experienced, namely curiosity and excitement. Curiosity for science, observing life around and within us to try to understand it. Excitement for the prospects that understanding would bring, and further sharing those prospects. To this very day, I strive to remain attentive to my emotions. I am constantly learning to communicate about them, understand where they come from, and act upon them. So let me leave you with the following. Consistently trusting our own emotions empowers us to fulfill our potential. Being present in the moment and aware of our own power and possibility is an important aspect of who we are as human beings. Remember this: every one of us has the inherent ability to achieve great things at any given time of our lives when we open up to ourselves. Therefore, I invite you to take the time to self-explore and embrace who you are. Thank you very much.